The world is going through changes. Changes happening at a speed that we have never seen before. This is leading to disruption, chaos, panic, fear, hysteria, and a turbulent economy and marketplace. How do you protect your wealth in a turbulent world? How do you invest for cash flow in alternative assets to escape the rat race in times of uncertainty? How do you decentralize yourself, your family, your community, your business, and your investments to become sovereign and escape the matrix? If you are looking for strategies, tactics, and techniques to escape the rat race and matrix, you are in the right place. My name is MC Lobsher, and this is Cashflow Ninja. This is Cashflow Ninja. I'm MC Lobsher. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode and spending your most valuable resource, your time, once again with me on the show. Everything Cashflow Ninja is at cashflowninja.com. That's cashflowninja.com. There's over 1,000 podcasts. There are 4 books. We have reports, webinars, and much, much more. And don't forget to subscribe to my weekly newsletter, the #1 newsletter in the alternative wealth strategy and alternative asset investing space, the Wealth Dojo. You can subscribe to the Wealth Dojo by going to cashflowninja.com/subscribe. I have a fantastic show for you today. I'm joined by Chris Miles from Money Ripples. Chris, fantastic to see you.
Hey, same here, MC. Good to be here with you.
Yeah, but looking forward to this conversation. We have had a lot of fun offline, hiking in Hawaii together and spending some time together with our family. It's been a blast. So I'm happy that my listeners and my viewers get to listen in on our conversations. But for folks that are not aware of who you are and what you do, can you please share a little bit about your background and journey with them?
Yeah, I mean, my background was pretty simple. I was raised by 2 loving parents. Even if they weren't always together during that time, but like I had a dad that taught me to work hard. Your word is your bond. Don't half-a anything, right? Don't half-ass anything. Just do it. Do what you say you're going to do. And then I had my mom, who's like all about following your dreams, and she was a professional artist and that kind of thing. But the one thing they did have in common that they taught me was that there was always a scarcity of money, right? There's never enough money to go around. We can't afford this. What do you think I am, made of money? Money doesn't grow on trees, all those phrases you hear growing up. And, so as a result, I thought, I don't want to live that kind of scarcity of life. I want to do something different. So I went to college because, college has got to make you rich, right? That's what Rich Dad Poor Dad says, is going to college makes you rich. And so I went to college. But again, I'm one of those guys, I like to see evidence that things work. And it wasn't very long when I realized that the best professors were the ones that had work that was outside of the university, right? The ones that had real life experience. And most of them usually had some sort of consulting business. So my goal was I was going to become a business consultant. I thought if I become a business consultant, I can teach people, almost like if you've ever seen the movie Office Space.
Yep.
I wanted to be the Bobs. I wanted to be the Bobs that came in and just try to fix everything, lay people off, and then try to tell the bosses to treat their employees better. And then I walk out with a big check. Well, I figured if I'm going to do that, should I have real life business experience? So I started I'd actually dropped out of college with 1 class to go before getting my bachelor's. And I was wandering around just kind of figuring out what business would be right. And the one that came up that intrigued me the most was a financial advisor. I didn't know that it took anybody off the street as long as you didn't kill anybody and you could pass a test with 70% and you're a financial advisor, right? And so I was interviewing, trying to get in, and they let me in, of course, because they let everybody in. And I started doing that. And my purpose really was, 1, I wanted to learn more about money. But 2, worst case scenario, I wanted to help my dad too, because my dad was always saying, I'm going to work until I'm dead, right? I'm going to do this forever. So I got into that business. Well, 4 years into it, my dad reaches out and says, when are you going to become my financial advisor? So I sat down with him, went back to my old childhood home there in Oregon, sat down at his kitchen table where he told me to be cheap. And, I ate those Cocoa Pebbles for a year straight, or Fruity Pebbles when we switched a year because it was on sale for that year, right? Got those case lot sales. You buy like 24 boxes at a time. And that's how we bought cereal back in the day. And so anyways, I'm sitting down with them And I was like, Dad, you've done everything right. I mean, you've packed your 401k, you've got your match, you're doing like every boy and good girl should do. You paid off your debt, including your house. You're 100% debt free. You did it in just 18 years. However, if you want to retire today at 61 years old, you better hope you die in about 5 or 6 years, because that's when you're going to run out of money. Okay, Chris, that's not what I wanted to hear. I want to retire. I'm sick and tired of this, because he literally almost died working. I mean, he had strokes in his 40s, heart attacks in his 50s. He thought work would literally kill him. And here I am telling him, yeah, you better hope you die soon, if you want to retire from this job, or just let the job kill you. And that bothered me. And just a few weeks later, I went talking with a friend who I trained to be a financial advisor, but then he left to go do real estate investing. And as I'm talking to him, I start arguing with him. I start telling him that stocks are better than real estate because, there's no way that works. And he's like, man, Chris, I'll tell you, like my dad and I, we've partnered on some deals in the last 5 months. And guess what? My dad has doubled his income. I'm like, that's too good to be true. No way. And he finally just says, Chris, how many of your clients are really financially free where they don't worry about money each day? I said, well, they all worry about money, because you turn on CNN and you think the sky is falling if you do that, right? So everything's bad in that world. So even the retired ones think that they're going to run out of money. Okay, Chris, well, how about this? How many of you guys as financial advisors are financially free, not off the commissions you're earning, but actually doing those investments? And as I really was honest, I thought, well, there's guys been working in my office since the late 1970s. Probably none. There's your problem, Chris. And as a result, I started taking the Matrix blue pill or the red pill, right? Instead, started going down the rabbit hole. And the next thing I know, a few months later, I realized I had a dilemma. Either I stay in financial advising and teach people stuff that I know doesn't work, or I leave. And maybe I'll teach some ballroom dancing on the side and do some mortgages, because I was a mortgage broker too. And so I did the latter. I was like, I got to keep my integrity intact. I can't teach this stuff anymore. And so I left. But I had to learn what these other guys are doing, because I knew there's guys in their 20s and 30s retiring in real estate. So I started doing the same thing, more like the typical rental type situation or flipping and things like that. Even did wholesaling, even though I didn't know it was wholesaling, something like wholesaling at the time too. And the next thing I know, later that next year, I actually was able to retire when I was 28, almost 29 years old. And that blew my mind. That was even possible, because I was hoping and praying if I just was cheap enough my whole life and saved enough, hopefully by my 40s, I'd be able to retire on my mutual funds. And here I am just less than a year later, and I'm able to retire off the real estate income, because it was about income and passive income, not about just accumulating a lot of money and then living on less than the interest. And of course, being a 28, 29-year-old that's, got no job anymore, people are like, how'd you do it? So 2007 actually came out of retirement, partnered with a guy named Garrett Gunderson. We actually started working on, created a company together and stuff. And I started teaching people how to get out of the rat race. Even though soon after the recession hit, I went back in the rat race, went over $1 million in debt, had to dig out of that hole, and actually retired the second time at the end of 2016, when I was able to claw my way back out of that $1 million debt hole. So anyway, that's kind of the long story short, but that's what really got me into this, and seeing this whole new perspective, going from the penny pinching saver that drank the Kool-Aid, right? Saying you got to invest in mutual funds, swinging the pendulum to mutual funds suck, way better in the alternative investment game, such as real estate and other things like you and I do. And that's what I've seen proven to work. And it's proven to work for many, many of my clients as well.
So the big hole at one stage that you were in the real estate too, was that during around 2008, 2009, or when did that happen?
Yeah, I started to see some cracks happening about mid 2007. So Garrett and I started a business together. We're sinking all our money in, and Garrett's like, hey, don't do any of these other activities that create passive income, which is ironic because we teach people how to create passive income. He's like, no, cut those off and just do everything with us, right? Just focus on us. Well, that didn't work so hot, because then we were focused on real estate flippers. Flippers were the first ones to feel the effects, because banks started tightening their lending without really telling us, right? They really weren't screaming off the rooftops like, hey, we're tightening our lending. And I saw this firsthand, because July of 2007, I did the Dave Ramsey method with my house. I was like, why don't I just take my, the extra cash I have, throw it into the equity of my house, because I can always just cash it back out, because I'm a mortgage broker and they'll give a mortgage to anybody with a heartbeat. So I figured I'd be safe putting money into my house. Now I had an emergency fund too, but I was putting a lot of money back in the home. So I had like 150,000 of equity in a home I just bought the year prior. However, when when July of 2007, I decided, hey, maybe I should do a cash out refi because I noticed that our business is not doing so hot. We're not making as much money as we thought anymore because these real estate investors are also feeling the pinch. I go to the bank and they say, well, sorry, if you raise your credit score up just 2 more points, next month we'll give you the loan. I go in August of 2007. They say, we just changed the rules last week. If you do X, Y, and Z, then we'll give you the loan in September. So I kept my credit score up. I did everything they asked. September, I walk in. I'm like, can we get my loan done now? They said, we're sorry. We don't do lending to business owners anymore, especially cash out refinances. And I watched all that equity gradually dissipate as the recession hit because I had a little McMansion, right? Those got hurt even worse than this lower priced properties. And so all the equity had disappeared. I tried to short sell the property. The bank wouldn't take it because my bank was owned by none other than good old Lehman Brothers. So eventually in 2009, I had to foreclose. I couldn't sell the house because they wouldn't accept any offers. I had to foreclose on that house right before my 4th child was born. So I paid the guy $2,000 just to stay in for 2 weeks for rent before we found some other place to move into right when my wife was dealing with postpartum and stuff, right? I mean, hard times. And the crazy thing is I only got $300 back from Lehman Brothers from that class action lawsuit too. So I was pretty pissed, you know.
It was a different world, and I appreciate you sharing that because sometimes we've had it so good since 2012 all the way up to Q3, Q4 of 2022. Like I always said, we've had it so good. It's one heck of a run. 10 years. I mean, think about it. It just hit me now too. If you started investing in the alternative asset investing space in 2012, I mean, it was really almost impossible to lose money for a long time, right?
Oh yeah.
Until things started unraveling. But the flip side of this is and that's why I appreciate you sharing this is like downturns are ugly. It's ugly. Like I tell people, you know, I was involved in real estate back in 2008, 2009 too, and it was ugly. And when things, when the faucets get shut down, like when you were just sharing your story where you went back and they're like, oh, sorry, you got to get your credit score up. And you go back, you're like, oh, sorry, we don't lend anymore. I saw that all over the place. I mean, banks, I had a mortgage with Washington Mutual, WAMU, that doesn't even exist. And then I had another investment property that had a mortgage with Countrywide, which also doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So it's wild. And that's the opposite side of it too, right? Is that, yes, it's been great and so forth, but things get ugly on the flip side of this. And that's when you really find out, you know, kind of like, all right, well, this is what we're dealing with on the flip side of good, right?
That's right. It's so true. I mean, I learned so many good lessons from that time period. And that's the thing. I think if anybody's like scared to get into real estate right now, I mean, fear can protect you to some level, but fear can also stop you from really living the life of your dreams too. You got to be careful with that, you know, because for example, I mean, when I got back into real estate, it wasn't until about 2016 when I started just testing the waters with real estate again. I was scared. I was so scared because I mean, I lost my own home. It was my dream home that I was trying to raise my family in. We got booted out. You know, I watched, you know, even rental properties I had, like some of them I was lucky just to break even. And even then, probably after all the extra costs, I probably didn't break even. I probably lost money on those deals. I mean, everywhere I looked, I was losing money. That business, I mean, it took 2 years to turn that business around. It wasn't until the end of 2009, that fourth quarter, when finally we started to see some hope, you know, but it was a rough period of time. You know, I was literally on welfare, you know, during that time. I mean, the guy that was supposed to have it all figured out was getting government cheese, you know, at the grocery store, you know, like that was me. You know, I was the guy that, you know, I was just feeling like a complete loser, you know, and that's why I stopped teaching people how to get out of the rat race in 2008, especially because I'm like, I'm back in it. How can I teach people to get out of the rat race when I'm in it? So I started teaching people how to find and free up cash, right? How to manage money better. And because that's what I was doing. I was getting very creative and resourceful with money because I'm just too dang stubborn. It would have been so much easier to file for bankruptcy. But I was just being a butthead about it. I'm like, I will not go bankrupt. Like I refuse. Like I lost everything. I turned in my Mercedes. I turned in about everything I could sell off, but I will not go bankrupt. And I'm not saying that there's anything against people that do, but that was kind of my thing. And And so I had to dig back out of that hole. I sold everything off I could to pay off those debts. And then I just got really, I mean, I pinched pennies. I mean, I got tight to the point like, I mean, I had a family of 4 kids, almost 5 kids, living on like $4,500 a month. Like, I mean, now today that would not be the case. That'd be more like living on 10 grand a month nowadays, I guess, maybe. But, for that big of a family, I mean, I was pinching every penny I could, and trying to come back. And I'll tell you the big thing I learned, being liquid with cash, man, like there's nothing that can beat liquid cash. That's where, when I rebuilt again, I got, my own infinite banking policies again. I'm like, I need that cash reserve, like I can't do what I did last time where I had some reserves. Yeah, I had my 6 month savings or whatever, right? But that goes by so quickly, when things are tight, especially when you're in a longer kind of a stressful period. And so doing that, not putting extra equity in my house, I realized don't do that ever again. Pay my minimum 30-year payment, and just keep going that way. And just, make sure I'm flush with cash. And it's always about that cash flow, that having that plus multiple streams of passive income as I built it again. That's what really has helped me be in a much better position now.
My new book, Get Wealthy for Sure, the #1 financial strategy for business owners to multiply wealth predictably, just hit #1 on Amazon. So Get Wealthy for Sure is an Amazon #1 bestseller. In this book, you'll learn the wealth building secrets that the ultra rich have used for over 170 years. You'll learn how to create your own banking system using a dividend paying whole life insurance policy, allowing you to finance your business growth, invest in lucrative opportunities, and build generational wealth, all tax free and protected from market volatility. You'll also learn the proven strategies used by icons like Walt Disney, the Rockefellers, and top CEOs to grow their empires and get wealthy for sure. You'll learn how to build a team of expert financial professionals, implement tax-efficient strategies, and protect your assets from creditors. You'll also learn the power of thinking like the wealthy and aligning your capital for maximum impact so you can take control of your financial destiny. I also share a step-by-step aligned capital strategy that will guide you to a life of certainty, clarity, and predictability without falling victim to misinformation or settling for the status quo. If you want to get a free copy of my book, Get Wealthy for Sure, and only pay the shipping and handling, you could go to getwealthyforsure.com. That's getwealthyforsure.com. The anti-financial advisor kind of strategies that you have, and also the cash flow recovery ones are fantastic. I mean, just to come up, and again, it's very resourceful too, because there's so many ways that folks are, from a cash flow management standpoint, money's coming in and going out, but you just shared already just on the mortgage there. And one way is just take the longest one, lock in that rate, pay the minimum every month, and then use that money for other places, right? So instead of, if you look at it from a bank side, they want you to overpay. They want you to pay as much as you can because you have more skin in the game, and they're getting paid back quicker. Where if you take longer to pay them back, you're paying them back in depreciating dollars, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So
exactly.
It's good. It's good stuff. And then building out a cash flow management system where infinite banking comes in and that kind of stuff to warehouse cash, because unlike the banks in 2008, 2009, you have guaranteed access to the cash in your policies, right? Through policy
That's
lines.
right. Well, yeah, I think when you see Signature Bank and, and some of these other banks that failed last year, and to think like only 3 banks fail, come on, like especially when there's significant banks, right? Like Signature Bank and so forth. I mean, those are big banks, for those that's to fail and then nothing else is happening in the banking industry, to me just sounds like a big crock of crap, because there's going to be more stress. That there's things happening. And if FDIC only has 1.5% of the actual reserves in their insurance policy, so to speak, but there's 100% to cover, if we lose 10% of banks, people are going to realize FDIC is not really insured. They're just, it's going to be like, if you remember 2020, March 2020, they said, we're going to do the PPI loans. You're going to, guys all have money. You're going to be able to survive. And then these companies are like, it's April, we still don't have our money yet. It's like, yeah, because they literally don't have it. They have to create it out of thin air and drive up hyperinflation to do it, right? And that's the same thing that could happen again. We have bank failure. So I keep the lion's share of my reserves. I keep it inside my policies, and I don't even use it all the time. Like, I teach people how you can like make money in two places at once using your policy and whatnot. But the truth is, like, yeah, I'll do that from time to time, but I'm storing more reserves. Just like Buffett's building up his cash reserves, I'm doing the same thing inside my policies right now.
Yep. Yeah. It's now capital preservation and cash. And to your point, so you had, and I love it how it's phrased in the media too, because you mentioned these banks were going under and they're like, well, they were acquired by a different bank, right?
Uh-huh.
Because if you look at all the banks that got swallowed up, it's like 7 of them. We
Mm-hmm.
know the Silicon Valley, the Signature Bank, like those were the big headlines. But then all of a sudden, very sneakily, you had all these other banks just get acquired by someone else. Oh, they're all fine.
Yeah.
They're fine. They just got acquired by someone else. And then you have the ratings downgrade of 10 of them, and 11 of them are like on a watch list.
Yep.
And then you look at the other place where people traditionally keep their cash as bonds. Well, the reason that the banks are in the mess is the spike in interest rate on the bonds, right? Their bonds
Mm-hmm.
positions getting cut up. So it's a very interesting environment right now. What are you seeing, like big picture, like from the economy, markets, and then also in our world, the alternative asset investing world? What's kind of your take?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I've been beating this drum a lot over the years, but it's even worse today than it has been even years ago, is the stock market. I mean, it's more than two standard deviations. It's more than 200% above GDP in the value that it has in the market. I mean, that means that based on where we are today, that the stock market should be closer to 2,500 than 5,000, right? I mean, that to me is a scary thing, and especially because I've learned over the years. I'm sure you have too, because you've been at this game like I have. I mean, you start learning over the years. You realize, whatever people are doing, whatever the majority of people are doing, you should do the opposite, right? If the majority of people are saying stock market's great, that's how you know that it's not. It's like Bitcoin. Like, I time Bitcoin very nicely just to play around, speculative, nothing fancy. But I would always buy it when people were scared and running away. So like after, I remember it crashed at 20,000, or started to crash 20,000. I predicted the month before it's going to crash, and it did. And it went down, eventually down to like 3,400. I bought it like at 6,000 when it was down there. But when it got up to 60,000 in 2022, and after I started seeing people posting on Facebook, like people that barely even graduated high school that I went to school with are now saying, hey, I want to buy a Bitcoin. That's when I knew it was time to get out. And the same thing with real estate. 2006, good example of real estate. Like, everybody got in. It's even like, I joke around with 2018, like, when someone's like, oh, I've been in real estate since 2018, like, I've never lost money. Yeah, but everybody and their dog made money in real estate. You could be a complete moron and make money in real estate even in 2018, 2019. It's what you do during the times that are hard. And so when you see those kind of times happen, that's when you would say, oh, I got to veer away from what the mainstream is saying and go to where people are saying stay away from. That's where I go. So I always do the opposite of whatever media is trying to tell me, or common people, are trying to tell me. And that's why it's dangerous. That's why you don't want to listen to coworkers. That's why you don't want to listen to your brother-in-law or people like that, because the truth is they're going to steer you wrong. So right now, I see real estate actually still a great opportunity, because people are still scared of real estate. Even post 2008, the reason I think it ran up so much is because people were always still scared. It never really got to hit a good top. Now, multifamily, you and I have both seen, self-storage, apartment buildings, things like that. Obviously, we know office space got kicked in the teeth because of COVID and everything. But, when we saw there in the multifamily space, they got hurt the worst because everybody was trying to jump in. Everybody's trying to throw money in. Big money was trying to go in. It was just creating a balloon, where single family housing, not so much, right? That was still relatively, it rose, there's no doubt, but it wasn't to the same degree. And so single family, I still see as good. I'm doing other things like raw land. I have a raw land, partnership with someone where, really, we've had less than $500,000 invested, but it's kicking off over $11,000 a month. For some people, that's all they need to get to the retirement type goals, or work optional, as I like to say. Oil and gas, I know you're in that as well. I do some stuff with mineral rights and royalties and get paid on that. Not huge. Not right now with oil prices being depressed a little bit, but still it's been averaging over 8% a year. I'll take that. That's not so bad, So I'm seeing that. Like I'm always just going where everybody zigs, I like to zag. Lending is another great place, as well as even in like industrial with warehousing and things like that are still really strong right now.
Yeah, those are great. And one of the central themes of all those different investments that you were sharing, it's real stuff, right?
Yeah.
Real estate,
Real
real
assets.
stuff, land, energy. So, and then lending on the real estate backed by a real asset. So I like that approach to it because yeah, I mean there's so many things I think that people have found out in the past 12 to 18 months
Hmm.
that were kind of fraudulent or
Hmm.
mismanaged, and this is just in the alternative asset investing space, right?
That's right.
And I keep saying that things have not gotten bad yet. We don't have a market crash yet in the equity markets, and we don't have an economic kind of crash yet.
Right.
Although it does kind of suck for the majority of people. But things aren't really bad yet, and we've already seen these things go south in our space.
Yeah.
So you have to anticipate building cash position and also investing in real stuff, right?
That's right. Well, even like apartment buildings, I used to say they're distressed, but I realized that that's really not an appropriate word because what happened with that space is that there's a lot of those properties that still have good value. I mean, I have some friends that are really good experienced operators that still experience some stress, not distress, but they had some challenges and headwinds because the whole space when the interest rates rose and they rose so quickly, as a result they started valuing those buildings differently because it's not like an appraisal you get on your house, right? It's all based on profits. Well, of course, when you start seeing, even if companies didn't borrow any money, their values get affected by those that did. And especially now that banks, those that were relying on the refinance strategy, they're going to refinance and pay their investors off or try to give them a good big lump sum of cash. The one issue that happened though is that when the banks realized, oh, there's more stress in this market, they all of a sudden required more equity to be there. It'd be like you saying, okay, I'm trying to save up for that 20% down payment on my house. And then the bank says, no, never mind. You're going to need 40%. And then, if you don't have 40% equity, you can't buy the house, you can't refinance, you can't do anything. You're like, where am I going to get this cash? And that's what's been happening to all these investors saying, shoot, what do I do? And I'll tell you, MC, this is the one thing I learned the last 2 years that I overvalued equity, because,
Mm,
we talk about, think like a bank,
yeah.
but do we really think and invest like a bank? Because banks don't like to have the asset. They like to have the asset as collateral, but they like to lend on that asset, don't they? And
Yes.
I was like, well, why would they do that? Why would they want so much debt? Why do they care about investing in debt? And why would I want to do that? Well, now seeing what's been happening, all these people that are equity investors inside these apartment buildings and self storage, they can't get out. And as a result, there's all that stress and things happening. And they're like, well, we can't pay you payments right now, not until we can get out from it or refinance or whatever we can do. And so they ask for capital calls. Well, just like any business that you're in, it's like, oh, I need to put more money in my business. And so they're asking for people for more money. Nobody wants to throw more money in, especially if they're going to lose it anyways. So those people are under stress. And what do? They start saying, instead of trying to do a capital call, try to raise more capital from these people that don't want to do it, I'm just going to create a debt fund. And and here's the thing that's insane, that's kind of pissing people off, is that debt gets paid before equity, right? It's actually
Yep.
safer to be in a debt position than to be in an equity ownership position. And this is the opposite of like the consumer saver mentality. We're always taught it's good to own things, it's good to have equity in things. But the truth is, it's good to have debt on things, not for you to be in debt, but to own the debt, to own that note. Because think about it. If you sell a house, who gets paid first? It's not you, it's the bank. If you have a mortgage, they get paid first. Whatever's left over, whatever scraps are left over, is then yours as the owner. So when you want safety in investing, I've started to realize more and more that debt is really more safe than even trying to own and have equity, because I get paid back last if I have equity ownership. Yeah, I can have more upside possibly, but I would much rather have my money come back. I want a return of my money, not just a return on my money. And that's where I've started to see debt as being much more valuable than I saw it in the past.
If you've been watching the news headlines, you know that the world's top CEOs, biggest investors, family offices, ultra affluent, and political elite are all moving to cash. Why? They're building up their war chest to go buy assets at a significant discount in the coming months. They are warehousing their capital in vehicles that have stood the test of time for 170 years with institutions that have made good on their promises for 170 years. If you're interested to learn how to build your own banking system using the infinite banking concept, just like all of these parties, you can watch a presentation at yourownbankingsystem.com. That's yourownbankingsystem.com. It's almost the approach of I want control, not ownership, right?
Yes.
Similar concept where, we are so ingrained and brainwashed that we want to own everything. I must own this.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, no, you don't. You just want to control it.
That's right.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. Question for you on the office space and some of the commercial real estate too. So in March of 2020, when we had the world being locked down, basically, it didn't take a soothsayer or a fortune teller to see that this was a really bad thing for office space. You're like, well, nobody goes to offices anymore. That can't be good. And then people, obviously when it opened back up, they stopped going back in. It's been fascinating to see that. But I'm almost surprised I haven't seen more carnage there. I'd love to hear your take on that. And also what a lot of these empty buildings, I see a lot of empty commercial buildings. It's interesting that some of them have been converted to data centers, for example. So that's kind of an interesting trend too, right?
It is. Yeah. It's still a really rough space to be in because you just mentioned it, right? I mean, you have to have demand for that investment, right? It's not just about, ooh, it tanked, now I'm going to get in. No, there's got to still be a demand for it. That's like saying, I should buy more coal, which maybe is a good idea sometimes, but it wasn't a good idea in the last 100 years, because we started to find replacements for it. And we're seeing the same thing as well in this whole sector. And that's why, you said like there's data centers. I mean, some people have tried to do like hotel conversions, when that wasn't going well, and they're trying to turn that to like self-storage units. And I've even seen people do self-storage on like certain floors of commercial buildings, so there's actually a self-storage, like maybe on the third floor of a building. And that's an interesting concept, but it's still, it's a lot of stress right now. It's not like the Great Depression, because Joseph Kennedy, he made a crap load of money. He went from bootlegger, well, supposed bootlegger, maybe not in reality. Allegedly bootlegging, definitely was a stock trader, bailed out of the market right before it crashed, based on insider trading or whatever it might be. He was worth $4 million in 1929, but by 1936, he was worth $100 million because he was gobbling up New York City real estate dirt cheap for pennies on the dollar, right? But the thing is, there was still that demand. And I don't know if I see that same thing today. That's why history is good to learn from, but it doesn't always repeat itself. Sometimes it's just a little bit different depending on what happens.
That's a really good take, because instead of just waiting for everything to crash and then going and buying it, it's like you said, is there actually going to be a demand for what I'm buying right now?
Right.
It's like, oh, Kodak shares just crashed. I'm going to go and buy some Kodak shares, And it's like, well, they're not going to be in demand. They're out of business soon. So you'd be stuck with all the shares that you bought for pennies on the dollar. It's kind of the same thing. So, that's really, really insightful. What are some of the biggest opportunities that you're seeing also in the world of alternative asset investing and alternative wealth strategies, in the coming months and then the coming years?
Yeah, I know you showed us on the Money Ripples podcast and we just kind of talked about it, but definitely lending, I think, is a great space because remember, interest rates are higher. It's more enticing for operators and investors to want to borrow your money and pay you well. I'll give you an example. I was talking to an operator just a couple of days ago as we were flying from Dallas, and he was telling me, he said, it was actually one of my clients. He's like, yeah, one of your clients really wants this equity deal. He's like, but I don't know if that's the right play. He's like, I wouldn't do it. And this is his own investment he could offer. He's like, instead of doing equity play, which could be good, he's like, I'd rather do a debt play. He's like, I had a guy come to me that with $2.5 million, I said, I will give you $2.5 million if you give me a 15% preferred return. Basically, just give me a 15% contract per year return. And the operator said, you know what? I like that deal better. In fact, I would do that deal even over the equity deal, even if there's a possibility you could double or maybe triple your money in 8 years. I would much rather do the debt deal. And if you do the math, you end up making more money or about the same or more anyways, but you get more of a guarantee. And so there's a lot of opportunity on the lending side of things. I definitely do think that single family, you're going to see that come back too, because it's so not attractive to people right now. There are so many people ripping on like turnkey rentals. That's what I usually prefer to do because I'm a horrible property manager. So I prefer to have somebody else manage it for me. I think you're going to see a turnaround on that, from the number standpoint. Most people are trying to do it from a cash flow standpoint. They don't look great, right? So if you're trying to, get yourself out of the rat race faster, they're not going to do it. But if you're looking to grow wealth, owning those kind of properties, having that control ownership, I think you'll see that the growth on those, plus having a real asset that, have multiple exit strategies. It could be sold to investors. It could be sold to, actual like people trying to live in that residence, right? I mean, you got so many options there. I think that's really a big opportunity that so many people have been shunning for the last 2 years. And I think it's going to come back. And I
Yeah,
think apartments are going to come back here in 2025 too.
yeah. You think apartments are going to come back in 2025?
I do. Yeah. I've started to see that banks, with a lot of the operators I've talked to, banks have actually been willing to work and try not to default, probably because in their mutual self-interest, they don't want to go bankrupt either, right? Like we were just talking about earlier. And so they're, for the right person, the right project, they're willing to do that. Not all of them, but for the right ones. And so I'm starting to see like it looks like we're getting close to a bottom or somewhere around the bottom right now on multifamily. So I think we're going to start to see that turning around right now. Even if you didn't time it just right, even at the end of 2024, you might still, with the right operator, still get in at a really good time.
Yeah. No, this is fascinating stuff. Chris, I always ask my first time guests a question, but I'd love to get your take on this too. If you cannot pass on any money to future generations, and you are only allowed to pass on principles and values to them to grow wealth and achieve happiness and success, what would they be? And if you could give me three, that would be fantastic.
Yeah. The overarching theme would be stewardship, right? Is that you are a steward of the money. You're born with nothing, you leave with nothing, everything in between is stewardship. As stewards, you're not like savers and spenders who live in a scarcity world. You live in a world of abundance, right? You're there to try to figure out, how do I multiply? How do I edify and make people's lives better? That's what really happens. And so definitely understanding principles of stewardship, really utilizing your money in good ways, not just to grow, but to serve others too. And that kind of goes along with the thing that really helped money become demystified for me was that dollars follow value, right? The more value you create for other people, the more you create a win-win, the more you solve problems and serve people and create solutions in such a way that people just want to give you money, the more money that follows. And as a financial advisor, I never understood that. I always thought it was a zero-sum game. You had to, either you won, somebody else lost, or vice versa. So if I'm a good person, I have to lose and take it on the chin, take less commission so that everybody else wins. And that's just not the truth, right? It's really about, how do I provide value, create solutions, and provide solutions for people in a way where money is just the natural receipt of that service. So understanding that is big. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it's about people. People are the true assets. It's not the real estate, right? I mean, no house ever wrote me a check. It's always a person behind it, right? Never have I ever received, money coming from an oil well. Even though I get paid off of oil wells, I get it from the people that operate it. And so understanding that it's always back to people, and really being a person of integrity. If you do that, you'll realize that you'll attract like-minded people, and you'll always have great people in your life.
That's awesome. Where can my listeners and my viewers, where can they follow you? Where can they stay informed of all the projects that you're involved with and all the great stuff you do at Money Ripples?
Well, yeah, Money Ripples is the key name, right? I mean, moneyripples.com. We have the Money Ripples podcast, and all our social media is at Money Ripples. So just follow us there.
I love that name too. How did you come up with the concept of Money Ripples?
It was actually right towards the end of when I was working with Garrett Gunderson. I worked with them for about 6 years. We'd started the company. It started to boom. Finally, we pulled out of that big recession and everything and started helping a lot of people. And a lot of it was from the cash flow strategies I learned going broke. So the whole cash flow process we had there, that eventually it became Wealth Factory, right? And even to this day, they're still teaching my old stuff. It was all from me going broke. And really, I saw the average person free up like $34,000 a year. And I remember just feeling the impression that I needed to create something else, right? I thought I was just going to do it. I thought I was going to take over Wealth Factory. I thought I was going to be, take it over and just be the boss of it. But I thought, I'll just have this side thing that's my education arm called money. I was trying to find a name for it. I was trying to figure out cash flow something. And I remember I was out for a run and I was just like, well, what's my real vision? What do I see? And on my run, I saw one of our clients that we had that they were a chiropractor in South Dakota, and we freed up $6,000 a month for them. And in that first month, what did they do? They went and they bought a $6,000 four-wheeler, which would have had Dave Ramsey just freaking out, screaming, cussing, and everything else, right? But I knew differently because they said, Chris, like we bought that four-wheeler because my husband finally feels like he doesn't have to work 6 days a week anymore. Now my husband's willing to take weekends off. I got my husband back and my kids got their father back. And we go four-wheeling every weekend as a family now. Like now we got that family time. And I realized like it's like what you said on my show, right? It's not just about that one person. It's creating that legacy throughout the family. Like it's creating a whole new mentality about money with those kids that benefits the community, the state, and ultimately across the world. And that's when all of a sudden the Money Ripples name popped in my head. And I was like, I got to go home right now, run back home and buy that domain for $8.95. And so I did. I got it, and it's been Money Ripples ever since.
Awesome. Well, this has been a blast, Chris. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your journey and your knowledge and providing so much value for all of my listeners and my viewers.
It's been such an honor. Appreciate being here, MC.
And thank you to all of my listeners and my viewers for, again, spending a most valuable resource, your time, once again, with me. Everything Cashflow Ninja is at cashflowninja.com. Over 1,000 podcasts, 4 books, reports, webinars, and much, much more, all at cashflowninja.com. And don't forget to subscribe to the Wealth Dojo newsletter, my weekly newsletter, the #1 newsletter in the alternative wealth strategy and alternative asset investing space. You can subscribe to the Wealth Dojo by going to cashflowninja.com/subscribe. Until next time, live infinitely. This presentation is for educational and informational purposes only. The information being presented and considered does not consider your particular financial objectives or situation, and it does not make personalized recommendations. This material is not intended to replace the advice of a qualified tax and legal advisor or other qualified professionals, and you should not use the information in place of a customized consultation with a licensed professional regarding your specific personal financial objectives, situation, and needs. We believe the information provided is reliable, but we do not guarantee its accuracy, timeliness, or completeness.